Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carly Egged, Workplace Experience Manager for BICO. Thank you all for joining us today as we welcome Laura Troy to teach us how to create a social media strategy. Laura has been working in public relations for the Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, and JW Marriott hotels since 2007. And so we're very excited to hear what she has to tell us. And just a friendly reminder to feel free to submit any questions that you have for her in the chat or the Q&A, and I will be sure to address them when she's done with her presentation. So without further ado, Laura, I'll pass it off to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Carly. And hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here to walk you through building a social strategy. As you know, there is so much that's happening in the social space, especially with the environment that we're in now. So what I'm going to go through is some ideas and some principles to help you create a social strategy if you don't have one, but also to enhance a strategy that you might already currently have. I'm also going to just take my camera off so we can focus on the presentation. I also have two visitors behind me, my dogs, and sometimes they can get a little rambunctious. So with that said, we can move on to the next slide, Carly. Great. So why are we here? Why do we want to be on social media? I think where a lot of companies and brands at times get a little off track is if they don't establish why they want to be in the social space. I think it's really important, whether you're on one channel or 10, to really have an understanding of what it is that you want to achieve. What are your goals? What are your objectives? And which channels do you want to use to best tell your brand, business, or company story? Social presents a lot of numerous opportunities, which at times can be very exciting for marketers, but also at the time, very overwhelming. I think it's important to think about what it is you want to achieve and then lining those goals and objectives up to the channels. You don't have to be on every single platform to be successful. We also want to talk about different ways to think about social. It is ever changing, it's evolving, and really focus on your strategy. I think it's important that if you start to see yourself get off track and steer away from the goal or objective you originally had, it's probably good to revisit if that goal needs to be updated, or maybe that's not where you want to spend your time. Time is money, so really want to think about which channel, which activation, which campaign is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So today specifically, we'll talk about the social channels very broadly, share some facts about them, how to effectively use them, and then I'm going to share some best practices. And then Carly, we can move to the next two slides. Great, perfect. So Instagram, I think probably many of you are familiar with Instagram. Instagram was bought by Facebook a couple years ago. What I think is very impressive about Instagram is not only do they have 1 billion active users, but it's also important to think about where their users are located and their age range. So Instagram runs a little bit younger than some of the other channels. The average age is between 25 and 35. Also important to remember that Instagram is 51% female and 49% male. Also, the most active users are from the United States, India, and Brazil. Why do I share these facts? Well, I share them because it's important when thinking about a social strategy. Who is the target audience you want to reach? What is that type of message? So, for example, if you're looking for a younger demographic, Instagram might be a good channel for you. If you wanted to grow your business globally, for example, India or Brazil, Instagram would be a good channel for you. Some things to think about with Instagram is that the size of your photo does matter. So you want to make sure that you're sizing it correctly for the platform. You've probably all seen images that were either Instagram sized it for you or it just looked a little awkward. So it is important when thinking about the size and the ratio for all of these social channels to really post in the way that is best performing. What is going to look best in the feed? What is going to look best in an Instagram story? Sizing is really important. It's also important to have a very clear aesthetic for your imagery. Instagram is very visual. It started as a picture sharing platform. It's something we all like to do in our day-to-day lives. We like to take photos. We like to show what it is that we're doing, why it's important. So really think about the type of content that you want to post. I would say this is definitely a visual first strategy. If you don't have strong visuals, Instagram might not be the platform for you. With that said, you want to make sure that whatever it is that you are posting, that there's a consistent style and tone. So there are a lot of different brands that have different content, but are really tying back to the goals that they have and what they want their brand to be known for. In addition, Instagram has done a lot of shopping lately. So over during COVID and quarantine, they released their shopping application, which basically means you can shop a product without ever having to leave the app. Shopping is going to be very dominant on a lot of social platforms moving forward. And also, I think it's important to really think about the statistics and your audience. And that's why it's important to know which platform is going to reach your target audience. Who do you want engagement from? Who do you want to connect with? If it's a younger audience, if it's globally a different place from here, each of these channels can be able to show you what it is and reach your content to that person. I also think it's important to be aware of social and content trends. Instagram stories became very popular, and we'll talk about that on the next slide, because of Snapchat. And there's a lot of different trends that are happening in the social space. So I think it's important to constantly try to educate yourself as best as you can to see what's popular and how you might be able to capitalize on that for either your personal goals or your business goals. And Carly, we can move on to the next one. So as mentioned, Instagram stories and shopping. Instagram stories was created to compete with Snapchat, and compete it did. Snapchat was all the rage a couple years ago because it had quick videos. There was an insight to what people were doing. Instagram saw that there was very popular, especially amongst a younger generation, and created it for Instagram. So with Instagram stories, there are 500 million users on Instagram stories every single day. 86% of Instagram users post to stories. So I think that's huge. People are using it and they're consuming it. 90% of Instagram accounts follow at least one business. So I think that's also important. When social first started, it was really about connecting with friends and families and loved ones, but it has grown now where a lot of people make their purchasing decisions, they research products, especially on Instagram. So not only are they using it to share their life and their experiences and connecting with their friends, but they're also using the platform to purchase. So I think it's really important here when we say people that use Instagram, they use it to discover and research and purchase. So I think that's great. In addition, 79% searched for more information about a product when they were served an ad. So for example, if they served an ad from Walmart talking about a lawnmower, they then researched in more detail about that product. So I think it's important to know that. And then 37% visited the retail store and 46% made a purchase. So again, this was a sample size of people surveyed, but I think it shows the power of Instagram and Instagram stories, seeing the content, seeing an ad, seeing a story, and wanting to learn more. So it's also important with Instagram stories that we post in a 9:16 aspect ratio. You want to post to stories to make sure that the content looks like it was fit for stories. It fits in that and very well with the rest of the content that's being displayed, whether it's paid or organic. So really think about the stories you want to say. Again, also have a clear aesthetic that aligns with your tone, voice, and style that you have for Instagram. It's also important to post between 5 to 7 frames per story. So you don't want to post 10, 15, 20 different frames because the user will lose interest. But if you keep it short and concise and share interesting things, that will keep their attention. There's also a swipe up feature, which I'm sure some of you have known and used, that can tie back to your website so you can learn more about a product and or a blog post or whatever it is that you want the audience to learn more about. We've also seen great success on Instagram stories if there's a call to action. So what do you want them to do? Do you want them to go to a blog post? Do you want them to purchase something? Do you want them to learn more? Do you want them to visit your website? It's really important when you are creating content that there is a clear call to action on what it is you want the audience to do with that information. And then also just to know, Instagram stories does disappear in 24 hours. And also on the previous slide, I did mention shopping. So Instagram is very shoppable now, and more brands are coming on to the shopping platform that Instagram has. So this means you don't ever have to leave Instagram to make a purchase on Sephora or Louis Vuitton or whatever other brands you might be searching, and new brands are added every day. This is important for Instagram because they want you to stay on platform as long as possible. And also makes it easier for the user. You see something you like, you connect on it, you get to the details of that within Instagram, and you can purchase. And then moving on to the next one. Facebook. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with Facebook. Facebook was one of the first emerging social media platforms. It's dominated in the news practically every day. A lot of people are very comfortable with Facebook since it has been around the longest. It is important to note that there are 1.62 billion active users on Facebook. I know sometimes people have said in the past, Facebook is dead, people aren't using it. Well, that's not true. And their statistics are very compelling. So people are using it. They're consuming content in a way that was probably different than when it first started, but Facebook is a platform to consider, and it's powerful in very many ways. So also important to know that users 65 years and older are the fastest growing demographic, and fewer tweens and teens are using Facebook. So that's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but this is something to keep in mind for your audience. So if you are trying to reach someone who's younger, Facebook might not be the way to go. But if you're looking for someone who is in their 60s, that might be a great place for you to start. Also, I think it's important to note that Facebook does have 74% of high income users. So for someone like me working in the luxury space, it is really important to think about where your audience is, where are luxury consumers. Facebook also has a high lot of users that are college educated as well. So some things to keep in mind for Facebook. It is really important to create a content strategy specific for this platform. So while Instagram is where your visual marketing strategy will be pulled through, Facebook is a little bit different because there's all sorts of types of content that work really well on Facebook. You can post a video, you could post a GIF, you could post a meme, you could post an article. People on Facebook as users are used to seeing a lot of different types of content. So I think in some ways it's really great to explore on what works best on your Facebook page. Facebook Stories is also very powerful, and it has over 300 million active users. And like I said, different types of content can be posted. And this is a fun fact that the highest traffic on Facebook occurs between Wednesday and Thursday. It's also important when you are posting to experiment with which day and time works best for you. These are on average, but you may find that a Friday morning works better than a Monday morning. You really want to optimize for timing. What time works best for you? Who is likely to be able to see your content and engage with it? Facebook, I know, as many of you have seen, has really taken a stance on a lot of different privacy issues, encouraging people to vote. So while there is a lot of content around Facebook, mindset of Facebook users are very different than Instagram users. So really thinking about what it is that you want to say, what type of content do you want to share, and what it is that you want to be known for. Facebook has a lot of different varieties and ways you can reach your audience. And then we can move on to the next slide. Twitter. So Twitter, again, also in the same vein of Facebook, has been in the news quite frequently, and mostly it's around privacy issues and also and free speech, if we're honest. So really want to make sure that Twitter is very powerful, and there are a lot of people using it. So over 150 million active daily users on Twitter. 63% of users are between 35 and 65, 34% female, 66% male. And when asked Twitter users, when seeing a company on Twitter, they said 77% of users have a better impression when a company responds to a tweet. This is very important, as in all social platforms, but specifically Twitter, and I would also say Facebook, is that it's important that we're creating a two-way dialogue. You're not just sharing a tweet or sharing an article and posting. You need to engage with your community, and you need to engage with the people that are connecting with you. If you're just tweeting to tweet or tweeting something and not engaging with questions or answers or comments, it looks like it's a one-sided conversation. And conversations, especially on social networks these days, are very multi-dimensional. They could bring in other users to share their experience. So really think about making sure you have time to respond and to connect with your Twitter audience. 40% of users of Twitter reported purchasing something after seeing it on Twitter. So again, these users are not only using it to follow the news and to have robust conversations about things that are important to them, but they're also using for it to shop and to have more knowledge. So it's really important to have a conversation with Twitter. I would say out of all of the social channels, Twitter is the most conversational, where they do expect a response and a quick response. Some say if they haven't gotten a response within the hour, they're turned off by that brand or that product. So it's really important that you have the time dedicated to really properly manage Twitter. I do think Twitter has kind of gotten a bad rap previously because of what people like to call the Twitterati, where a small group of people take over a conversation and dominate it in a negative way. I think that is a very small group of people. The average people are conversing around topics that they're interested in. They're passionate about sharing their point of view, and they're passionate about the companies that they follow and the products that they want to purchase. Some things to keep in mind, like the other channels, is that we want to post pictures that fit a certain aspect ratio. So for Twitter, you really want to think about it as a 16:9, because the way it looks in the feed is important. As I mentioned before, it is the most real-time platform. And this is also a great platform to connect with other businesses. It is very B2B. So if you are looking to connect with other businesses or get other companies involved in a conversation that you want to have, this is a really great platform to do it. And community management is important. I can't stress this enough. To engage with your followers, to show that you have interest in what they're saying. Twitter is all about relationships. And I think it's also important to think about who you follow, because they'll also look at you to say, okay, if you follow XYZ, I could be interested in what this person is saying. So I would think of Twitter as an online relationship building platform where you connect, you share thoughts. It's great for discussion, but it also is really good for people to purchase things. And also it's sharing real-time news. So people go to Twitter to get their news, to get their information. Things in the past have been broken on Twitter before traditional news media. Everyone is around tweeting and using Twitter. So it's really important to figure out what your strategy is and how you can best use Twitter to reach your audience. And then we can go on to the next slide. Pinterest. Pinterest to me is so much fun, and it's a very underutilized platform. Pinterest has 30 million monthly users, and this is predominantly women. So it's 80% female, 20% male. 58% say they make and use Twitter for purchasing decisions, and 85% of women use Pinterest to plan life moments. For those of you that aren't familiar with Pinterest, Pinterest is a very do-it-yourself, travel, recipes type of platform where people are sharing their tips on where to travel or what type of recipes you should be making. I personally used Twitter a lot during quarantine since I wasn't an essential worker, so I was home for a few months, and I used Pinterest to try all sorts of new recipes. Pinterest is great for fitness, pretty much any sort of how do I do this on my own type of content works really well on Pinterest. Pinterest also saw a spike with dads. A lot of people were home with their kids during quarantine or homeschooling their kids, and parents, and particular dads, were using Pinterest to try to find activities to do with their kids, whether it was arts and crafts, it was something, a fitness thing, cooking. It's really a fantastic platform. But what is also great about Pinterest is that it is used like Google. So you write in, how do I make zucchini bread? Or where should I travel in the United States? And all sorts of pins will come up. So it's really search based, which I think is great. So definitely Pinterest is an amazing platform if you have articles and also if you have a strong visual strategy. I wouldn't recommend Pinterest if you didn't have strong visuals to support, because as you can see these examples, this is what will capture your attention. So something to think about, but Pinterest is very good, especially from a search function where people are searching all sorts of different ideas. So if you were a business and you had great visuals around a particular holiday or baking, this is a really great channel for you. Pinterest is also active. This audience is very active. So 89% of United States pinners use the platform for inspiration and purchases. Again, this is for your visual marketing strategy. And then this is a great way to reach broader audiences. Again, this is predominantly female. It skews usually from 25 to 40. So the age range is young and a little bit older. So there's a lot of different types of people you can mix and create great content for. But also at the same time, while it is only 20% male, dads on Pinterest are becoming much more predominant and they're using it quite frequently. So if you had a product that you wanted to reach dads or fathers, Pinterest might be a good option for you. So a lot of things with this platform that you can do. I do think it's really underutilized, but I think it's because it is such a visual heavy strategy. From a paid standpoint, Pinterest is doing a lot of promoted pins and things like that. So there is ways not only to create your content in an organic way, but also to promote it to a specific audience you want to reach. And then we can move on to the next one. LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I have to say, again, like Pinterest, was underutilized in a way outside of business. So for those of you probably all on LinkedIn, and I've probably been using LinkedIn very actively since the pandemic, it was started for a business community, but it does have over 690 million users. 30 million companies have a LinkedIn profile, and people, especially since the start of the pandemic, have spent 4 million hours of LinkedIn learning content and watching it and absorbing it. I can say for myself, I've also done that. LinkedIn is, I think, a really great tool that goes beyond the business community. I think they've made changes since the pandemic where people are really utilizing it, not only to make connections, to foster relationships, but also to share different business ideas, marketing tips. I would highly recommend for those of you that haven't used the LinkedIn Learning to do so. There are really great webinars, not only on social media, but on a variety of other topics, but in specific to social. There are many types of webinars on how to grow followers on your channels. And they talk about how to do it from not only a personal perspective, but also a business perspective. There's a whole tons of content on how to do paid social or digital marketing. So I highly recommend this tool just from a personal and professional, because you can learn so much and they break it down where it's very easy to follow, and I highly recommend it. But this is also a great place to share your brand news or your business news. If you have a press release or if you've done something different, this audience would really gravitate towards that content. Not only is it great for brand building, but it's also great for personal building. I would recommend that the articles you do share or the content or posts that you create should have more of a business mind versus a personal photo on vacation. I would keep that content to Instagram or Facebook, and I would use this content to really personify your brand or the professional you want people to see you as. Some tips: most engaging posts are usually between Wednesday between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then Thursday, you can see these times 9, 1, 2, and Friday at 9. And the reason why I list this is because timing is really important. Most of the social channels have decided what they think their audience should see from you. And specifically Facebook, I'll use that as an example. So Facebook decides if your post, whether it's personal or for a brand, should be seen and consumed by the audience. Versus TikTok has taken the Netflix approach and will share content with you or about you that they notice based off your patterns of you watching other content. So it's just a different perspective, but that's why timing is so important, because knowing that organic reach is very low, knowing that Facebook is deciding if your content is worthy of sharing, it's important to post at the best time so that way you can have the most eyeballs on your content. And then moving on to the next slide. Content creation. So I'm going to share here just some studies that I've done on the Ritz-Carlton side, just to show you our thought process and why content is so important. So for us, a couple of years ago, we were really trying to dive in on what content was performing, why does some content though the team thought was amazing didn't perform, and a lot of it does come down to styling and color. So why I can't stress enough when you're thinking about content specifically from images and or videos, that we're really thinking about the colors and the style and the tone that you're using, because colors really do matter. So in this instance, we did a comparison for photos at cities during the day and photos at city during the night. And we noticed when we posted cities at night, our engagement went up 30%. And the reason why we think that is because the color scheme really tends to match with Instagram and Facebook. Colors for Facebook, oranges, pinks, blues, purples, tend to perform really well. And the reason why that is because they're probably soothing colors. Blue, you probably think of the sky or the beach. It's just soothing and it puts your mind at ease. I think we all can agree Facebook this day and age can be a very personal and be very, when you're using it, and your mindset when you're using it can feel very personal. So want to make sure if we can incorporate colors that people like to see and feel good, that's the way we want to go. It's definitely soothing. So we decided to put more cityscapes at night into our content rotation because we know, people want to see that and the colors align. And again, we want to make sure people are consuming our content. Okay, the next one. And the next one, we always wondered why ceilings that had a hint of glamour and grandeur did well. But we weren't really sure why. We were like, this is kind of weird. It's pretty, but I'm surprised it's a top performer. And what we learned was it was the addition of the chandelier. If you took the chandelier away, the content didn't perform as well. So think it's subtle things like that you wouldn't necessarily think would matter. It really does. It is the devil in the details, if you will. And with all of these social networks, it's really important to test and innovate and continue to try new things to figure out what content resonates with your audience. So for here, we definitely knew that the images with the visible ceiling worked really well versus if you took it away, it just kind of performed average. So for us, we decided, okay, we need to make sure where possible, we would include a chandelier because our performance went up and people were more engaged with our content. Okay, moving on to the next one. And then the same is with breakfast with a view. This does not work for lunch or dinner. There's something about breakfast that really puts people at ease. And again, it could be because when you're viewing this photo, you're thinking about a great vacation that you had or a vacation you want to have, or people really just like breakfast food. I know personally, I prefer breakfast food versus dinner or lunch. So it's a very emotional connection that people have with this topic. And then you add a beautiful view and you think, oh, I could be there. And this worked for us for city properties, resort properties. It didn't really matter. It was just as long as the view is really great and the breakfast spread looked delicious. And I think that's really important when thinking about content, is thinking about what resonates with your audience, what's going to have an emotional connection. We're emotional people, and social is the same way. And also your mindset will change depending on what platform you're activating on or you're reading at the moment. Facebook might be very emotional if you're reading about the news or something that you don't like that a friend posted, versus Instagram usually is about great photos that people have taken, whether they're in their day-to-day life or a vacation or something that they're doing that's interesting, fitness, cooking, all sorts of different things. Your mindset when viewing that content feels a little different than it does on some of the others. So that's why it's really important to think about your audience, to think about what it is you want to achieve, and then lining up your content with a specific platform. That's really important. Okay, the next one. And then colors. Colors are so important. I think sometimes, and I've probably said this numerous times, but social is emotional, and sometimes we forget that. And if we need to really focus in on what do people want to see. Now, I'm very lucky. I worked on luxury hotels, so that is a great topic because people naturally love to travel. But I think this applies to whatever business that you're doing. Find what it is that make people happy or enriches their life or makes their life easier, and be able to create a strategy around that. So for example, if you are a business and you do people's taxes around tax season, show them how working with you is going to make their life easier than them doing it on their own. And you could create fun memes, you could create articles, a lot of different content styles, but really focus in on the emotional connection and how we can either enrich someone's life, make it easier, show them why your product or business is good for them. So one way we did that was through color. And we noticed that color matters. Color matters, font size matters, picture sizing matters. Some of these more technical things really do matter because it's how people are viewing it. Most people are viewing all of the social networks on their mobile devices. The social connection went up during quarantine. People started using social and the web and mobile a whole lot more than they were before. And they're already very active, but with limited things to do, limited places to go, unless you're an essential worker, people really turned to the internet, and the consumption went up across all of these channels. They were searching for things to do in their home or their backyard or activities that were safe. So social consumption is very high. So we want to make sure we're utilizing these tools and techniques to make sure that our content looks the best and is engaged with. So for colors specifically, light sea green, whenever we had a light sea green post, it went up 24%. Now, one would probably argue it's because these are pools, but you could also manipulate this to show light green and a food dish, or a light green in a city. It doesn't, or a flower. It doesn't necessarily have to be the beach, because they're going to see that light green, already have an emotional connection to that light green, and then look at the rest of the picture in the copy. So colors do matter, and highly recommend experimenting with different types of filters to put on your content. So not only is there a consistent look and feel, but you're really gravitating towards colors that people are engaging with. And then the same here was light pink. And sunsets and sunrises are something universal that people all around the world like, and it's soothing. You look at it, you either want to be there or you feel a little bit more calm. Colors do have that impact, and there are certain reasons why brands have picked different colors to represent, because there's a connection to that color, and depending on what it is that you want to achieve. And then moving on to the next slide. So what we did learn was text on photos like this does not work. And why does it not work? Well, first of all, it doesn't really fit with the style on any of the social networks. And it also looks and feels like a piece of collateral or an ad. So if you are doing an ad, or you do have something that you want with text on it, really think about how you can repurpose it, because this isn't performing and people are going to scroll through it. So really think about how you use text on photos, or if you even use it at all. We try to be very limited with text on photos because it just doesn't look like it fits within the platform. And I think that's really important to think about the platform you're activating on. You want that content to look and feel like it belongs. If it's an outlier, people will just scroll right over it because it looks like it doesn't belong and they don't really have any interest. And also, when you're creating content organically, really think about your message and how you can promote that in a way that is fun and different and engaging. We'd probably all argue and agree with that none of this is really engaging. So the message is being lost. So again, experiment with different types of ways to do that. And you could have fun copy, you could have a really great image, you could be sharing an article, but really think about what it is that you want to achieve and try to use the best practices for each channel. So a lot of text and photo wouldn't be a best practice. Okay. And then apps for content creation. I get a lot of questions about this. These are ever evolving. There are lots of different types of apps that you can use. It really kind of depends on what it is that you want to edit. But for me, I think if you want to see everything laid out, all of scheduling your content, how it all looks together, an app like Planoly works really well. So I'm a very visual person. So I like to see everything that I want to post for the next 2 weeks and see if it all tells a cohesive story. So I would recommend that. Unfold or Storylux for collages that you would use in Facebook stories or Instagram stories. Unfold was specifically created for Instagram stories. So this is a great one to use. It has a lot of different collages that you can pick from. You can put a little text if you want it, but again, it feels like it belongs in Instagram. It elevates the look and feel of your content, so it's not just posting from your phone to Instagram stories. It looks like you thought about it and you're presenting a nice story, and again, it's very cohesive. Fonts do matter, which is probably super basic and everyone knows that, but it is really important to think about the type of font that you want. Some of your business may have a font that you bought, some you may experiment with, but really think about the fonts. If it's too big, it feels like I'm being yelled at. If it's too artsy, I can't read it. So really think about fonts, and especially for Instagram or Facebook stories, because it goes away in a few seconds. So want to make sure that you're capitalizing on that screen power, how it fills the screen, but also can they see it? Can they read it? Can they action it in 15 seconds or less? I think that's probably a best practice. If you do any stop motion, Tezza is great for that. If you want to do moving stories, Mojo is good for that. If you want to put text overlays on videos, Hypertype is really great. For filters and edits, you could use Lightroom. You could also use VSCO. I do recommend, if you have a lot of visual product and you want to really enhance your visual strategy, really finding a filter that works best for you and then using that or a variation of that on all your content. So then it trains the audience to know it's your content before even reading your handle. So really try to have a cohesive look and feel so everything looks and fits together. And then just a sample here for those of you that may or may not be familiar, but REVOLVE is a very big company that utilized social media before it was even big. So REVOLVE was a company founded by two gentlemen in Los Angeles, and they really wanted to bring the street clothing style that they're seeing in LA to men and women around the world. And so they created probably a very successful and one of the first solely e-commerce companies in 2003, which if you think about it, was pretty early on for having businesses really just solely be digital, right? That was kind of, they saw a trend and they saw the power of e-commerce before a lot of other people did. And from there, they just grew it. They started to work with bloggers. They started to do really unique partnerships. And I would say they were one of the first ones to do influencer marketing. And for those of you that aren't familiar with influencer marketing is a strategy which identifies individuals that have influencing over potential buyers and then uses them to generate content, sell a product, experience, or business. So influencers can be celebrities, but most of the time they are not. And they are people that have built a strong community on social and their followers follow them. And they buy what they buy, they eat where they eat, they take their recommendations. So everyone from Amazon to the brands that I work for, fashion industry, beauty industry, you name it, all work with some way, shape, or form of influencers because they're trusted within their communities. And what we've actually seen is that with the rise of COVID and quarantine, that people are actually looking to even influencers with smaller accounts, but are know what to do in their city. So they're eating in the same places, they're going on the same hikes that they're doing because they're really trusted. And I think that's important to really hone in on, is that they're really trusted and people have followed them for years, and they are honest and they share what they're thinking. They share the products they love. They share the products they don't always love. And it's just a really great two-way dialogue they have with their community. So Revolve really captivated on that. I think they made influencer marketing what it is today because they pulled some of these really well-known people within the Instagram community, had them start working for Revolve, and took them around the world and parties. And granted, it was all very elegant, thumb-stopping content. But then they saw the power that and success that Revolve had. Other companies started following suit. And I think last evaluation of Evolve was probably like $500 and $600 million, if not more. So their strategy worked, but it was first a e-commerce first strategy, then it switched into a social mobile strategy. So I think that's really important too, of will your audience be looking at the content from a desktop? Will they be looking at from a mobile? And really thinking about social first. If you really want to reach your consumers, social is highly important, but again, you want to use the right channels that have the audience that you want to reach. Okay, the next one. And this is just an influencer overview. If you want to work with influencers, if you have worked with influencers, maybe it went well, maybe it didn't, but I think really want to identify someone who can really bring your product or business to life in an authentic way. And I think it's really important to align yourself with someone who has similar goals and values as your business and company. You don't want someone to just stand up there and post a photo of a dress or a product and be like, I love this. You really want them to help tell a story and be engaged with what they're saying. So you want to also make sure that the influencers you're working with, that they have an authentic reach. They're not buying followers. They're not buying likes. And there's different sites like Gramlist and Social Blade where you can look at their history to see if they've been buying likes and things like that, because that wouldn't make them authentic and you wouldn't want to use them. But you also should identify what it is that you want to get out of the influencer partnership. Do you want sales? Do you want brand awareness? Do you want a relationship? Do you want content from them? There's a lot of different ways to use influencers, and different businesses and brands have used them in different ways. So for example, Amazon used influencers for a variety of different products. Amazon was really pushing their bell that had the video camera on it earlier this year. So they used a lot of influencers to demonstrate how they brought that to life. They've had fashion partnerships since Amazon is really trying to grow their fashion brand, and each influencer released their capsule of the best products. So it doesn't have to be fashion, travel, or beauty. You could use an influencer. Again, going back to my tax example, if you decide you wanted to use an influencer and do their taxes, and they share about that, because they share about their life. It's not just pretty glamorous things. And especially most of them have blogs where they talk about the day-to-day stuff, and people ask them for advice, not only on fashion and travel, but they ask them for the day-to-day things, like, where should I be eating in my city? I need help with taxes, or I need a great lawyer. Like, they'll ask them all sorts of different types of things. Sometimes there's answers and sometimes there's not, but I don't want you to think, oh, I just need to have a gorgeous hotel to work with an influencer. No, I think you can work with influencers for any type of product or business that you do have. And also, I think they're great with content. So if you're listening to me and you're like, oh, darn, my visual strategy isn't where I want it to be, influencers are really great at helping you get that visual you want. They could be a model for the photo shoot, or they could take photos for you and give you the rights to use them. So there's a variety of ways you can work with them. You just need to figure out what it is you want to achieve and set goals, and then find the person that works best for you. And then this is just a little checklist that I have for myself. Do they have a style and aesthetic that aligns with your brand? Does this person engage with their community? Again, it needs to be a two-way dialogue. They just can't post about all the beautiful things that they're doing. They need to have meaningful conversations. This individual work with other credible brands. Is their reach authentic? Do they have a global audience? In the case of Ritz-Carlton, we wanted a global audience, but it doesn't always necessarily have to be a global audience. It could be if you want to grow business from DC, that's a great way to start. And there are a lot of great influencers in this area too. And do they have an authentic following and engagement? And then I would add another bullet to that is, are they authentic in general? So while influencers are amazing, they are people, and like people, we all make mistakes. And there was a rise with some influencers going to protests this year and pretending like they were participating and getting that photo when they actually weren't, right? So you also want to make sure, how are they socially relevant if that is important to you? Are they credible? Are they authentic? Are they aligned with the goals that I want someone to know about me and my business? Everyone's entitled to their personal opinions, of course, but you really want to pick the influencers that align with your brand goal and your business goal, and also being very true and authentic and not just chasing a like. Okay, and then Annabelle had all these things, which is great. And then we brought her around the world with us to really bring to life some of the great properties that we have for St. Regis. Okay, and then community building. I can't stress this enough. Social was built on communities. Influencers that we just talked about was built because of communities, because people wanted to opt in, hear their thoughts, and really think of these people as friends and confidants. So it's important to make sure whatever social platform you're on, whatever strategy you include, community building. It is super important. So Twitter is a great way for engaging with consumers. We really want to make sure you're engaging with your audience, so you could ask them a question, you can respond to their comments, create a two-way dialogue. Even if it isn't positive, you still want to make sure that they know that you're listening and you're engaging with them. Ask them questions. You can do polls on IG stories, but you want to make sure that they're involved. It shouldn't be the way marketing was done before the internet, where you just put something on a billboard, you put something in a newspaper, and that was the end of it. And like I said, these are multi-dimensional conversations. So it was one way in before the internet. Now with the internet, it's two-way. But even now today, I think it's multi-dimensional, because you can bring other people into the conversation with that brand, especially on Twitter. So really think about how you can grow your community, because they're the ones that are going to continue to comment on your stuff. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to be advocates for you in a way that obviously influencers are not, because this is organic. So utilize and share and make sure that you're really spending time building your community. I would say out of everything that we talked about today, probably the two things I would take away was create content for the channel you want to be on, and community. It is really important to make sure that you don't forget about the people that have given you success or comment or buy your product and are talking to you online. And then paid social, I could probably spend, like, all of these slides are very quick because we only have an hour. I could probably spend hours and hours on each of them, and specifically with paid social. So each platform offers a different way to use money to promote posts or to create an ad campaign. Each channel has a different way of doing it. Each channel has a different way of measuring it. So I really think about, it's important to have a paid social campaign because organic reach is very low. So if you really want to reach a targeted audience, you need to create an ad campaign that is engaging and really will hit the audience that you want to reach. It also depends on your objectives too. So your objective on Instagram might be different than LinkedIn, and your creative should be different on LinkedIn than it should be on Instagram. Again, I think depending on what it is that you want to achieve, example, IG stories is really competitive. People are noticing how much time people are spending on IG stories. If you want to drive traffic to your website, IG stories might be a really great place to start. So it just kind of depends. Again, it would come down to what is the goal you want to achieve? Do you want to have traffic? Do you want to have people actually purchase your product? Do you just want brand awareness? All those things to keep in mind. And then you would decide which channel works best for you. And then you would create the campaign. Really, again, focusing on your creative, I think, is really important. And also having a clear call to action. When I'm seeing it and I'm reviewing it, I should know what you want me to do with it. But again, hopefully this webinar is interesting, but paid social is another topic where we could spend hours and hours on how to do it really well. And then just some final thoughts before we had questions. I know I've thrown a lot at you, but these are my key takeaways for those of you that are starting from scratch, who have just tapped your toes in the water, or someone who already has a robust strategy. Here are some things to keep in mind. Make sure you have a strategy and execution plan. I can't stress enough that it's really important to have a consistent tone and voice and style content that's executable for you. I am not recommending you be on all the channels if you don't not only have the manpower, but also the budget and the content. Really think about the content that you have, what you want to achieve, and what you want to get out of being on that social channel, and then figuring out which one works best for you. Know your audience. Each of these audiences and each of these channels are different. Your mindset is different watching a YouTube video than it is watching a Facebook video. It's just the different platform. It's a different thought process. Really think about the audience you want to reach. If you want to reach a younger demographic, TikTok might be the way to go. If you're looking for the 60+ crowd, Facebook probably is good for you. If you're looking for everything in between and having meaningful conversations around something, Twitter might be a way to go. So there's a lot of different channels and a lot of different options, but really think about what it is what do I want to achieve, and how can I use the channel and the audiences that are on that channel to the best of my ability. Always be authentic. It doesn't matter if you're a big brand or a smaller business. People on social will notice if you're not being authentic and true to who you say you are. Always be authentic. And review content and platform trends quarterly. And I have some suggestions on how to do that. But it is important, not that you need to activate on all of them. It is overwhelming. For me, getting back into the social space after being on furlough, I'm like, I've been doing social for myself, but I'm doing it again for businesses. I need to get caught up on the trends. It's really important to try and think about different types of trends. Again, they may be applicable to you or they may not. An example of this would be the rise of TikTok. You probably saw it dominate the news this summer. It's the #1 most downloaded app this year. TikTok is really where it's at. People want more short, humanized content, whether it's from hairstyles to food to dances. That's a trend. So again, that might work for your business. If you have someone who's really funny and on camera and can do some cool memes, TikTok actually might be great for you. But that's why it's important to try as best you can to read a few articles on social a week. LinkedIn is a great spot for that, just so you know what's happening and then can adapt. Experiment with copy and posting schedule. And this is actually one I heard repeated yesterday, actually from Facebook. I was on a webinar with them, and they said it's important to continue to experiment with your copy and posting schedule and also try to be innovative. If something doesn't work, don't get discouraged. Try something else. Continue to innovate and test and learn. And then continue to adapt with the ever-changing social space. And the why I say this is because a year ago, people like to consume a little bit longer form videos. Like the average was 30 seconds. With the rise of TikTok, it's like 14. People really want to see short, snappy videos. They don't want to see minutes long video content unless it feels like a movie and you're really engrossing or it's a topic that they're interested on. But on average, people want shorter, quicker, and they want to consume it. So that's why I say try to continue to change with the social media space. Ever since the rise of COVID, I would say that all of the social channels have changed a little bit, not only with the audiences, but also consumption. Like people are consuming more content. They want to see more content. They want to educate themselves. Certain channels are actually pretty much all the channels are encouraging voting for people that live in the United States. So there's a lot of things happening in the social space. You just need to figure out where it is that you want to play and what makes you most comfortable, where your product and business will be best aligned. And then, like I said, LinkedIn webinars are fantastic for those of you that are thinking, okay, I don't know how to create content. There's a LinkedIn webinar for that. For those of you that are like, okay, great, how do I get more followers on LinkedIn? There's a really great webinar on how to seamlessly start to do that. So I highly recommend, they vary anything from 20 minutes on to a couple hours. But if you want to learn more about digital marketing and having a digital marketing strategy, that's great. There's also social media articles, not only from the platforms themselves, but Sprout Social, Shareably, TechCrunch, Luxury Daily. They all talk about different innovative ways that companies are using social media, and then also talk about the social media trends. And again, I'm not saying all the trends are going to be applicable to you. I think as long as you go back to what people want to see and create that emotional connection, whatever your product or business is, that would be the goal. But again, you can probably learn things along the way to enhance that. And then emerging trends to watch, TikTok, huge. I think that's really important. People are definitely using TikTok for shorter content, but they're using it for all sorts of content. Versus different from Instagram, where it felt more celebrity or influencer based. TikTok, I would feel, is more average people just doing super cool things, whether it's comedy, dancing, hair, some comment on society, right? There's all sorts of TikTok videos, and people are sharing their thoughts, and it's connecting and really creating an emotional, powerful community. TikTok is skewing younger, but I think you will see that change as more people became familiar with it, since again, it was part of a younger crowd that discovered it, and now people are using it and seeing it because it's been in the news so much. Also, shorter videos are something that's definitely a trend and probably will carry on. But TikTok's super fun. You can get immersed in it for hours like I have, and a lot of great videos to come from it. But also, I think it's touches again on there are people like you, and there are people who feel the way that you do and are really articulating it in fun ways. So TikTok has a lot of great opportunity, especially if your audience skews a little bit younger. Video content to continue to dominate. So again, with IGTV and TikTok and things like that, super popular. Podcasts are very popular, especially people who are on back-to-back video calls. If they're working remotely, a lot of them will take to their podcast and after work or during work, during lunch, what have you, and just tune out for a bit. So podcasts are huge. I would expect more of them. Social commerce, like I said, will continue to expand using social listening tools. And then the most important, I think, is having a creative approach by platform, i.e. content for Pinterest and Instagram should be your best brand's visual strategy. LinkedIn might be more of your business approach. So I think that's great. And then also just some fun things that I learned from Facebook yesterday that I would share before we quickly get to questions, is they're really talking about discovery commerce. So using their paid social applications to discover new products. So it's not just aligning and getting content for those that have said, I want a new couch, and then they're serving them content that shows a couch. It's now showing people things that they may not have known that they needed, right? Before it was just, I want this product, I get served these ads, or I research this product. Now it's kind of on the flip where they're still doing that, but there's such a great opportunity to get in front of an audience that might not have known they needed the product that you're selling. So I think that's really important. And also, when you are thinking about doing paid social and online transactions, it needs to be a frictionless experience. I can't tell you how many times where I have had my credit card out I'm ready to buy, and then the website goes down or there is an issue. So again, if you're encouraging people to buy through your website or through paid social ads, it needs to be a frictionless experience. And then don't forget to test and innovate with creative, continue to try. And then also, when you're thinking about creative and you're thinking about ads, try to create things that puts the user in that life experience. So for example, if you have household products, show someone actually using those products in the household, or showing something that's inspirational. Or if you're Carvana, all of their ads, whether it's on TV or on social, show how you can buy a car from your living room, right? So when you're thinking about creative, show how you can enhance their life, how you can make it easier, have it be inspiring, and show the product in the way that it could be used. So those were some tips that I thought I would share to end out our presentation. Great.
Okay, thanks so much, Laura.
Of course.
So we are right at time. We did have one question,
Sure.
but
Yeah, we can, if you want to take one question, happy to do so.
okay, this person just asked, are you being asked more about using TikTok as part of your social strategy?
So I think for TikTok, I think some companies 100% should be using it. I'm not necessarily sure where I'm going to go for my brands with TikTok, just because I just don't have the content that works on TikTok. But TikTok is something that I'm constantly watching and trying to figure out where my place is, especially because it was definitely for younger kids. And that makes me nervous, targeting younger kids with an ad, right? I'm sure there's whole sorts of policies around that, but now we know that it's growing and there are more adults on it. It's definitely one to watch. So if you have that type of content, I would definitely see if it performs on TikTok.
Okay, great. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to email them to us or send them, and we will get an answer back to you afterwards, since we are at time. Laura, I want to thank you for coming out and for giving us such great content. And remind everyone that the recording will be posted on the Flourish site at beconet.com/flourish within 48 hours, and that we have 2 great events coming up next week, and so to be sure to check those out.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for letting me take over your 1 o'clock hour. So hopefully it was helpful.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.